If you cannot hear me at some point my voice will go down, just let me know. But my name is Elena Korsakova and I'm here as a citizen. I do not represent my office. I'm just here on my free time to tell you what I know about Jacksonville Economic Development Commission, which I'll refer to as JEDC, and what I have learned about incentives process while I was working on that audit. The audit was done by the Council Auditor Office, and this office is basically independent from the administration, and this probably was the reason why the audit was a little bit shocking to the citizens and to the administration as well. Some of you might have heard about Inspector General Office that used to be an office under the mayor, which this year they basically closed it down because we had basically duplicate services. And that office, for example, they audited JEDC a couple of years ago too. They audited SMG contract, which is basically all the sporting facilities, and they didn't find too many things, and I think probably because mayor went through the things and cleared them up, because there was a problem with independence. So when we audited JEDC, it became an audit because of two things. First, it was an effort by True Commission. If you ever heard of True Commission, it's basically concerned taxpayers of Duval County, and they were pushing for it for, I don't know, a couple of years, I heard, but they ended up asking Clay Yarborough to order to Council Auditor to do the audit, and that's when it became an audit. But if you have free time and want to get into the politics and you have some love for numbers, well, actually, if you just have common sense, that's like people like Greg Anderson, the new council member. He was in True Commission, now he's a councilman. So this being said, we found basically that JEDC sucked in all three areas that we looked, which was incentives, administration, Cecil Field revenues, and Cecil Field expenditures. And I will not talk about Cecil Field, but basically we have a company that administers Cecil Field, and we spent a couple $1 million into this company, and these people, they drive cars home, and they buy, I don't know, blood pressure monitors for work, and you and I, we're paying for all of that. So it was pretty interesting to look at that. But the main subject is incentives. That's why everybody's sensitive to this audit. And if you ever interested, I put a link on the Facebook. And basically, in fiscal year 8, 9, and 10, we were spending about anywhere between $4.5 and $5.8 million every year. Went just for incentive. It's your and my money, because JEDC doesn't make any money. It's a transfer from general fund to JEDC, and JEDC gives it out to every company, whoever has a contract. So there are various types of incentives. You start with downtown incentives with some easy rev grants. That basically, if you build a building in a particular area, you get your taxes back for a certain period of years. And then there are local incentives countrywide, and there are state incentives, which is QTIs. That's the one you're interested in particular. And of course there are federal incentives. So when we talk about QTIs, what happens is the company comes and talks to the local people and state that applies for this grant, and you and I will give 20% of the incentive. 80% is given by the state. So when we talk about $1.something million for the JP Morgan, you and I will pay about 200 something over a certain period of time. After they move in, after they build the job, build the building, or expand their operations and create so many jobs. And the good thing about state incentives is that the state basically contracts an audit for a firm, CPA firm, that comes and audit incentives recipients. And I feel really good about it. I talk to those people, I know what they do, and I feel comfortable with what they do. So I feel good about the overall compliance with the QTIs. What I don't feel good about is the compliance with local incentives, which we give a lot of. I don't remember the numbers, but I actually think local incentives, we give more weight in local incentives than in QTIs. And basically what JEDC does, they will ask companies to submit reports and say how many jobs company created, and we found that sometimes company never send any report, and we still give the money away. A company sends the report and says we didn't have 100 jobs as we promised, we only had 80, and we still pay them 100% of whatever we're supposed to pay for the year. Or the company said we only created 80, we had to create 100, but because the audit, but because there was no audit clause in the contract, we still would pay them whatever we had to pay. So it was very disappointing what we found. There were basically we went and we audited 2 companies just to look for their jobs if they created them, and it's not a secret, you saw it on the news probably. Winn-Dixie. We went to Winn-Dixie and we said, okay, you reported so many jobs, show us your system, your HR, whatever. And we figured out that the number of employees that they were reporting as local Baldwin location jobs, they were actually working in Alabama. But because they were supervised by a man in Baldwin, somehow the system messed it up and linked them into the... So it was a system problem, and Winn-Dixie came back and actually gave the city about $328,000, which was good. And I think now we're going after a little bit more, because JEDC actually said, well, you owe us about 500, but it's okay, just give us 300. So we told them go after 500. Another company, I think it was not... it was basically intentional. They reported vacancies, and JEDC never went and looked if vacancies were filled up. And they reported salespeople that were working in different states, and JEDC never really cared about that. And basically JEDC is giving money away all the time to anybody who asks for money, and there are no compliance verification. We would ask them to involve some small local businesses, and we would put it in the contract, but we would say just in good faith try to involve them. And we found that some people try, some people don't. They report, some people don't report even if they have to. So JEDC is in trouble, and you probably can tell it from the news. So we followed up on the audit because the council was very concerned, and they asked us to go and look at all of the remaining local incentives. And basically we're going to go back and look for them for the last 3 years. We're not concerned about state incentives, we're not doing anything with that. And Mayor reacted in his own way. He has created the JEDC task force. I'm not sure what would be the end product, but that's what he's doing. I think that's about it. If you have any questions.
So there really isn't any kind of process by which they look into companies that they're going to devote this money to. They just give it to them. Like for example with JP Morgan. I think I talked to Bill Gilliford, and he said that the city would be making money back property taxes, but JP Morgan is actually only going to rent $66,000 worth or 66,000 square foot of office space. So that they would have gotten the property taxes anyway from the management, from whoever owns the property. And I guess to get back to my question, basically their record in other communities, like with JP Morgan, dealing in high-risk derivatives and bribing Jefferson County, Alabama officials into getting the government to invest in those kind of things, and now they're almost bankrupt as a result. I mean, is there any kind of, are they going to create some sort of criteria where we basically just say, well, look, you guys kind of treated other communities horribly, why should we give you money?
The audit focused on basically on compliance after the fact, when the agreements were enforced, contracts were signed, and the jobs were created. So we didn't really look what happens before we sign any contract, because it's a very political issue, and people have different opinion how incentives are effective or they're not effective. But what happens is company applies to Jackson Economic Development Commission, they use some kind of metrics, it's all online, you can see it, and they say, okay, you meet this criteria, you meet this criteria, you like it here and there, and they come up with some kind of project score, and they take it to a board, and a JEDC board. I'm not sure, I asked a couple of people, they have never heard that board actually ever turned down any project, so I'm not sure what's the purpose.
They never turned down it?
I'm not sure about the truth of that statement, but I asked a couple of people who are very knowledgeable about subject, they have never heard that JEDC turned down some projects, JEDC board, but so, but essentially, the policy that they used was written sometimes in 1996, maybe, investment policy, which is online, you can find it there. And even though there are certain criteria that we're looking for, we can always override it. And I'm pretty much sure every contract that we sign, every agreement, we override some kind of criteria what we thought were important when we came up with a policy. But QTI, it's usually creation of jobs. The local incentives, it's usually property taxes. So if they apply the QTI, it's as long as they create so many jobs, that's what they judged upon.
It isn't the actual QTI though determined more by Tallahassee than it is. So
QTI is a state.
That they give that kind of money to.
Yeah, QTI is a state program.
Sure.
Yeah. So it's all in state, but we have a choice to say, are we going to subsidize 20% or not? And if we say no, then it's not going to go through the state either. So we have to say yes on our end, and then they would be approved there.
Do you have any sense how much money has been given or is given on any in a year time period?
Yeah.
I'd be curious about that, and if you can just kind of list a couple of companies other than Winn-Dixie and JP Morgan. What are the other beneficiaries? Are those mostly?
It's all public information.
Yeah.
To be honest, my car was in the shop today again, and my computer, of course, my printer, the printer department, I don't need, so I couldn't print it. But like I said, every year in fiscal year 8, 9, and 10, we were giving out 4.5, 5.8, $5.2 million. It was budgeted, so I'm not sure how much exactly, but pretty close to the budgeted number. And every year when budget comes up, they actually list all companies by how much they're going to get under local or state agreement. And there are different companies. Just off the top, it's I don't know, Volvo, it's BMW, Toyota, probably all the big names, the distributors, the warehouses, Cayman, Mary Steel. I mean, there are a bunch of them. They're all listed in the.
Are there like local companies, local small businesses?
Local small businesses? Well, yes. Like there is Dupu Silo facility on Edgewood. They do something with coffee. I'm not very good with this stuff. I guess they're dried, so to me it's a small company.
So if I'm asking a question that makes it redundant, does the state audit this as well?
State audits QTIs. State audits QTIs, Qualified Target Industries, which is a state program. State does not audit local program, which is, I call them REV grants, redevelopment agreements. There are different names on it, but basically anything that is local, state of course will not audit, and I would say at least half of the money that we give out, so at least a couple $1 million every year is local programs, and they should be audited, but JEDC has never audited them, and they now always mention the fact that they used to have 40-something people 7 years ago, and now they have only 17, but the problem is that 10 years ago they were not auditing them either.
So with the state putting out such a proportion of this money and the city matching it, the state should bear some responsibility for not following it up as well.
What we found in our audit, it was basically the local incentives. What the two companies that didn't comply with job creation requirements. We didn't even really look at the state incentives because we talked to the company, we knew CPA firm, we knew what they're doing, how they auditing, and we felt good with about those controls that they have.
Do they hold in any account a lot of these corporations that will basically just create jobs for about 3 years or so, and then end up migrating them out of the area?
I don't think so. There are any clawbacks on jobs continuity, I guess, and this is, I feel strongly about it. If every agreement I looked at usually say you have to create full-time job, and full-time job is basically a job that is expected to last 1 or 2 years. So the company, the second company that was not in compliance, they said, okay, this is December 31st, 2006 or whatever it was, our clock has started, we're going to keep our jobs for 2 years and that's it. And the city just swallowed it because that's what was written on the agreement. And so there are companies that create a job for a certain period of time and then they close down or they decrease the number of jobs and that's it.
Or they outsource.
Oh, yeah, you name it.
Yeah.
And then another interesting thing is that the way agreements are written, any agreement with the city of Jacksonville, the company can create jobs or they can use basically lease employees. So staffing agency employees, temps are okay. Which is, personally, I think it's ridiculous. That's not what we think we're paying for.
Yeah, exactly. You're not getting the value if the jobs are only lasting for a year or two, or they're only hiring from outsourcing companies, like temporary agencies and that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't see it too often. I only saw it once or twice, but nothing stops employees from doing that. The way we were writing our agreements.
Have there been any changes in the ways that JEDC operates since Mayor Brown was elected, other than creating the task force that you're not clear with?
JEDC was basically under the chopping block during the budget process. They got about half of their budget for the whole year because the reorganization is taking place. And I'm not sure what exactly is going to happen with JEDC. It's going to be there, but it's going to be called different name. It's going to be organized differently. So I'm not aware of any big changes, to be honest. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.